I'm Mike Calabrese. I'm joined by Mike Iannello. We are the Group of Five Deep Dive guys under the Big Bets on Campus banner. And for years, we've been begging people to watch more G5 football. We've been trying to let you guys know there's superstars, there's really good teams. You don't just have to wait for the New Year's Six to find out. Well, this year, we're moving from the kids' table up to the big boy table. We get to talk about a team that for sure is going to make the college football playoff. The new 12-team field has room for the top G5 champion. The question now is who is that G5 champion going to be? And now that the dust is settling here on the college football season, at least the first month of it, we start to have some data points. We have some teams that have scored some major wins over Power Four competition. We have some teams laying in the weeds. And it's a question of do you think they're really going to get there? Or do you think the ticket, the value of it is just too good to pass up? I'm going to welcome in Iannello here to discuss a few teams that he thinks have the best chance, or at least are worth a flyer, to make the first 12-team college football playoff field.
Yeah, like you said, Breeze, we have been begging for a seat at the table here for years. We finally have one, and we've had people tweet at us, comment and stuff saying that they wanted to see us talk playoffs on the G5 deep dive. We don't really have time. We're trying to keep those shows quick. So we said, hey, let's break off. Let's do a little YouTube roundtable, very informal, just, shooting the breeze back and forth about our thoughts on the playoff picture and who we thought. And this is a perfect week. We're going to do this every week. This is a perfect week to get started because this is kind of a bad week for the G5 playoff contenders. I know we're going to talk about, how will the Power 5 games be held against, these G5 teams. I don't personally think it will be a ton, but losing Navy is certainly going to get held against Memphis. Getting blasted by South Alabama is going to get held against App State. There was another one. Who's the other one? Oh, no, losing to Buffalo is going to basically eliminates the MAC in my opinion, because I think you agree a MAC team had to be undefeated to get that bid. So Northern Illinois losing to Buffalo probably eliminates the entire MAC. So this was a bad team for three of our top, playoff contenders coming into this week. So basically, the way I want to start this discussion is just asking you if you could make this bet right now, Mountain West versus the field, would you make that bet?
Yes, I would take the Mountain West. I do think Boise is deservedly the number one team in terms of the odds market. They're between 3-1 and 7-2 to get this bid to make the 12-team college football playoff. But when I look at it, you have ESPN analytics giving them a 27% chance to get this. They already have that one loss. I understand it was a quality loss. This is very quickly becoming like college basketball, where the committee is looking at, did you schedule up? Did you challenge yourself? Did you play on the road? Losing by 3 in Eugene, it was an absolute, masterclass by Genti in that game. Unfortunately, they lost that game. And when it comes down to it, if they get a second loss, if they stumble, they got late season games in bad weather, they play Wyoming, weird things happen in the Mountain West at altitude later in the season. So to not have that opportunity for a second mulligan, I think that makes their 27% likelihood a little bit off in terms of my, projections.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I would even throw Fresno State in that mix. We talked about it on the G5 deep dive this week. I actually like Fresno State this week against UNLV, but I'm agree with you. I think, that's what kind of sucks is there's a chance one of those teams eliminates themselves, but I think a one-loss team would still be in the mix. So I agree with you. I think if whoever of that big three in the Mountain West, if they can skate through with one loss. Maybe if Boise has a second loss, they can. If they lose in the title, well, like you have to win the title game. If Boise loses to Washington State, maybe they can sneak in with two losses, depending on what the other conferences do. But I agree with you. I would think that that would be the best. I think we said the Max eliminated. I think the Liberty has to run the table for any CUSA team to have the chance. The one thing I'd push back with the Mountain West, and we'll talk American last, is the Sun Belt. I think I mentioned App State probably eliminated themselves already. But James Madison is a team I bet to win the Sun Belt before the season started. They're a team that's 3-0. They just whooped North Carolina, a game a lot of people saw that got national headlines. I think giving the profile of James Madison, obviously, what people saw them do the last 2 years, knocking on that door of the Sun Belt title, not being able to get there. I think they break the door. I think they win it this year. I think they're a team too that's only going to get better as the season goes along. So the fact that they already look this sharp, 3-0, again, just put up a 70 burger on North Carolina, either going to continue to get better with Barnett at quarterback, Continue to learn under Bob Chesney's system. I talked about Dobbs in the preseason. He has been awesome at linebacker for them. And then sticking in the Sun Belt, your Texas State Bobs, I also think are right there in the mix. And I think the best thing for the G5 is that we get a James Madison Texas State Sun Belt title. It's also the best game for our pod. We're going to that game if that's the case. But I think the winner of that game, if they don't trip up in a bad spot, because one of the reasons I like JMU, by the way, is their schedule's like pretty much cakewalk the rest of the year. So if they don't stumble and Texas State doesn't stumble, which based on the improvements of their defense, which was kind of our big concern, and they definitely look like they've taken a step forward. If neither one of those teams slips up and loses a bad game, and that's the title game, and we mentioned the flaws with Boise with their defense. Boise can get picked off again if Fresno beats UNLV. I think the winner of the Sun Belt will also be in a pretty good spot. Do you agree with that as well?
I agree. I think if you want to put your name on James Madison at 15 to 1, that's what they're out there in the market right now. I think there's tremendous value on that because of the path that you just described. Yes, they have a very manageable schedule throughout the regular season, but potentially getting an opportunity to beat a double-digit win team like Texas State in the Sun Belt title could be that last little springboard they need to get a resume in front of the committee that is compelling enough. I'm going to
Hey, hold
throw
on, real
this.
quick
Yeah.
before you pivot, just to keep this gambling. You mentioned JMU's 15 to 1 to make the college football playoff, right? All right, well, they're plus 290 to win the Sun Belt. They're the favorite to win the Sun Belt. So you do the math there. Again, the MAC's gone. If you think Liberty loses, they're gone. The AAC is a huge question mark right now. I think the whole league is going to cannibalize itself personally. I was high in Memphis. I was high in South Florida. UTSA's terrible. Tulane's terrible. South Florida already has two losses. Memphis has a bad loss to Navy. So if we're mentioning this is a two-horse race, and James Madison's the favorite at plus 290 to win the Sun Belt, yet they're plus 1,500 to make the playoff. That math ain't mathin'. So, like you said, I really like the value on James Madison. And I'll be honest, I mean, I know you have a big number from the preseason. If you think Texas State's what are they, plus 900? I don't hate the value on Texas State still at this point if you want to kind of fade the Mountain West if you want to.
I'm going to put one last long shot on the table before we table this conversation, at least here right before week 5. The Naval Academy is 140 to 1 to make the college football playoff. Here's the thing, they just dog walked Memphis. And when you look at their schedule, they have an opportunity to play against Notre Dame on October 26th in a game at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford. I think that they have the explosion in terms of their offense. Their offense, with this wing T element peppered in, is giving them the ability to beat teams 3 and 4 and 5 yards at a time, but also 50 yards at a time. You're seeing it in terms of their explosiveness through the air. Their quarterback is now leading the nation in QBR. I know that's not a sustainable thing, but in terms of what they have been on offense in recent years, this is going back to the Keenan Reynolds days. That's how explosive this offense is. The difference is it was a one-man show during that run in the mid 2010s. This team with this caller and Drew Cronick, I think, is for real. Can the defense hold up under PJ Volker? We'll see. But with an opportunity to score a marquee win over Notre Dame on a neutral field, where if they enter undefeated and Notre Dame is right back on the cusp of being a top 10 team and being a serious contender for a playoff spot themselves, what do you think about the number at 140 to 1?
Definitely like the number. Well, I was going to ask you if you want to do that, patriotic look, would you take Navy over Army?
I would take Navy over Army. I think there's, still some novelty to what they're doing with this wing T experiment, and it's clearly working. I like Army a lot. I think the ceiling for the Navy defense is a little bit higher than Army's.
I'm also still a little confused, if I'm being quite honest with you, about can they make the playoffs? The playoff selections before Army and Navy play. If they're both, you won't be sick if they're both 12 and 0, and the
Yep.
committee says winner of that game is in. Oh God, we're going. Is that in Philly this year?
Well, what's interesting is that the AAC title game, which could be Army versus Navy,
It's before
af
that.
is before the Army Navy game. So the committee would then have to make the choice then, and then they would have to play another game.
Then one would have a loss, obviously.
Right.
Then you'd be like, well, if they win, they're in. If they lose, then the Sun Belt.
Technically speaking, if Navy were to win the American and they're undefeated, they're going to get invited, and then it's a de facto exhibition game. The committee can't wait an extra week. They're going to make the decision. I believe it's the Monday right after championship weekend.
Yes.
So there's no time for them to wait in that spot.
So just wrap this up. Keep this unless you have any other points. It's September 24th. Who makes the playoff?
I'm sticking with my guns on Texas State. UNLV is right there in my 1B spot. I think Texas State is going to win out. I think they're going to beat James Madison in the title game, and that's going to be critical because I think at that point James Madison's probably going to only have one loss. They will be ranked, and that'll be a final data point for the committee to be able to use to put them in over a two-loss Mountain West Conference champion.
This is going to be such a fun Sun Belt season. Yeah, I'm going James Madison. James Madison's my pick. But we want to make this interactive. We want to hear from you guys. Comment below. This is your prediction of who will be there in the end, not who's, obviously Boise's position today. Who do you think escapes the G5 race? Comment below who you think is the G5 representative in the college football playoff.